My ex-boyfriend had crossed the line. Not only did he invite my estranged parents to my house without warning, but he also refused to understand why I broke up with him after that incident. When I cut ties with him, he started stalking and harassing me, desperately trying to get me back. I was left with no other choice but to file a restraining order, which eventually led to his arrest. That chapter of my life was over, or so I thought. Then came John. I trusted him enough to open up about my dark family history, the trauma I endured, and how my parents essentially abandoned me on my 18th birthday, leaving me homeless. He was supportive at first, asking how things were with them now. When I told him there was no relationship, he seemed shocked, disgusted, even. His attitude shifted subtly after that, as he began encouraging me, week after week, to try and reconnect with my parents. The final straw came when I discovered he had been secretly messaging my father. When I confronted him, he acted like he'd done nothing wrong. He insisted my father had changed, claiming I was a horrible person if I didn't give him a second chance. I was furious, on the brink of breaking up with John, but he promised he would never bring up my family again. I regret believing him. Barely a month passed before I came home to a nightmare. My parents, people I had not seen in years, people who were more like ghosts haunting my past, were standing in my living room. The sight of them triggered an overwhelming sense of dread. I turned to leave, but John blocked the door. He said I needed to hear them out, but I wasn't having any of it. In a surge of anger and panic, I lashed out, scratching and kicking him until he crumpled to the floor. I bolted out of the house and into my car, driving away with my hands trembling on the wheel. John started calling, over and over. At first, I ignored the calls, unable to process the betrayal. But after a dozen missed calls, I finally pulled over, shaking, and answered. His voice was soft and apologetic. He said he was sorry, that he didn't mean to hurt me, he just thought I needed to fix things with my parents and that I'd be better off for it in the long run. Part of me wanted to believe him, to think his intentions were pure, but I was still too angry. I told him I needed space, and for a while, he respected that. After several days of silence, John bombarded me with messages, asking to meet face to face. He wanted to explain himself, to make sure things didn't end on such a sour note. I wasn't sure I could handle seeing him again, but part of me was searching for closure, maybe something to make sense of it all. We met at a small park near my apartment. John looked worn, his face tired and his hair messier than usual. Those once warm eyes now carried guilt. He started with an apology, his voice quiet and measured, as if he was afraid anything louder would drive me away. "I'm sorry," he said, staring at the ground. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how else to help. I thought I was doing the right thing." I didn't respond. My arms were crossed, and I was determined not to forgive him until I had heard everything. He sighed, running his hands through his hair. "I know I crossed the line," he continued. "But you have to understand, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I've seen how much your past has weighed on you, and it killed me. I thought if I could just show you that people can change, if your parents were different now, you wouldn't have to carry that burden anymore." His words hung in the air. He was positioning himself as the hero of my story, the one who would swoop in and make everything better, even if it was against my will. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, trying to stay calm. "John, you don't get to decide what's best for me," I finally said, my voice steady but firm. "You don't get to choose whether or not I reconcile with my parents. That's not your call." "I know," he said quickly, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "I know that now, but at the time, I really thought I was helping. I love you, and I just wanted you to see that people can change. They deserve second chances." He leaned in closer, his eyes pleading. "You don't have to forgive them or talk to them ever again, if you don't want to." But I was thinking about our future. I didn't want you to carry that anger with you forever. I thought maybe if you had closure with them, we could move forward, without all the baggage. The word, baggage, made my stomach twist. My trauma, my pain, everything I had gone through, he was reducing it to baggage, as if it was something I could just set down and move on from. It wasn't that simple. It had never been that simple. "I'm not baggage, John," I said, my voice low but controlled. "What happened to me isn't something you can fix with a conversation. You don't get to decide how I handle it, and you definitely don't get to go behind my back and bring my parents into my life." He frowned, frustration creeping onto his face. "I wasn't trying to fix you. I swear, he stopped, searching for the right words. I just thought you were letting the past control your life, and I didn't want that for you. I wanted to help you let go. You don't get it, I shook my head, exasperated. You don't understand what they did to me, what they took from me. You don't know how hard it's been to build my life without them. And you definitely don't get to decide when I'm ready to let go. There was a long, heavy silence between us. For a brief moment, I thought he might be understanding, that maybe something I had said had finally clicked in his mind. But then his face hardened, and his posture shifted. He crossed his arms and leaned back. I'm sorry, he said, but his tone had changed. There was bitterness in it now. I thought I was helping. I thought you'd be grateful, but it seems like you just want to stay angry. You just want to be the victim. His words were a slap to the face, cutting deeper than I expected. I'm not a victim, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I'm someone who gets to decide who's in my life and who isn't. And if you can't respect that, maybe you shouldn't be in my life either. John's eyes widened, clearly taken aback by my response. He opened his mouth to speak, but I stood up before he could say anything else. I need time to think, I said coldly. And if you really care about me, you'll give me space. Don't contact me until I reach out to you. I walked away, heart pounding. I didn't know if I could forgive him, but for now, I needed to be alone. The next couple of weeks were quiet. John respected my request for space, and for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like I could breathe again. But the silence was temporary, and soon, John found a way back into my life in the worst possible way. It started with a text message. Not from John, but from my father. He wanted to meet for coffee and move forward. My heart sank. I knew instantly that John had broken his promise. He had given my father my number. Furious, I called John, demanding an explanation. He didn't deny it. He admitted everything. I thought it was time, he said, as if that justified it. I gave your dad your number because I thought you needed to make peace with him. I know you wanted space, but I still believe you'd be happier in the long run if you talked to them. I was beyond words, too stunned and too hurt to speak for a moment. My hands shook with anger. You don't get to decide that, I finally said. My voice ice cold. You don't get to decide anything about my family or my life. I told you to stay out of it, and you went behind my back again. He tried to interrupt, but I was done. No, John, you need to listen. You've shown me time and time again that you don't respect my boundaries. This isn't love, this is control. There was a pause, and I could hear him sigh on the other end. I just wanted to help, he muttered, his voice dripping with self-pity. I was done with his excuses, his manipulation. We're done, I said firmly. Don't contact me again. If you do, I'll go to the police. I hung up before he could respond, my heart racing. For a moment, I felt a surge of relief. It was over, but that relief was short-lived. Almost immediately, the harassment began. At first, it was subtle. Blocked calls in the middle of the night, with no one on the other end when I picked up. Then the emails started, long, rambling messages from new accounts he created.